Hello there, welcome back to another tier list video. A while ago, I've recently made a few of them throughout September as of recording this, including a top 10 video. I'll link the whole playlist in the description so you can check out what's available for you to watch and hear all of my biased takes on weapons here and there. Hopefully you'll enjoy this one as well. Because for this video, I will be covering the submachine guns on a tier list. SMGs are one of those fun weapons you can use in high power level missions. They shoot rapidly fast, that you can nearly annihilate any mist monsters you see, or basically tag each husk in a group aiming left and right, eventually killing them all, making SMGs seemingly fun to play with. The thing is, there's not that many submachine guns, unlike the abundance amount of assault rifles, in which I covered a tier list of it earlier than this. It's a long one, but if you insist, feel free to check that one out, and let's get it started. I'll begin with the base game weapons because they're more accessible at the moment, especially after the daily rework update. The typewriter, first of all, it is a very high magazine submachine gun. It has a pretty decent fire rate and damage that is pretty good for killing off groups of husks and single targets, but because of its inaccuracy and high recoil, it drops to B tier for me. Next one is the Monsoon. It's actually a fun SMG, very high damage per second, but the thing about the Monsoon is you're required to charge by a small period of time to start shooting, but it is actually worth it. It shoots twice as fast than the typewriter, but it drains ammo pretty quick because of that, even with magazine size perks on it. For those reasons, it goes to A tier actually. It would have been a great SMG either way. Another base game weapon is the Thrasher. Of course, it goes straight to S tier on my books. Very easy to get. It's schematic because it's almost always available throughout the mission alerts, which will sometime give newer Save the World players a head start with a high DPS SMG. It's very accurate, very high DPS, very stable recoil and fire rate, and also great perk options. Definitely recommend getting multiple of Thrashers with different elements. I'll also put the Riptide on S tier as well, because its damage output is almost the same and it's cheaper to craft. Everything else applies the same way with both of these. The Viper is about the same performance as the Thrasher and Riptide, but it's less accurate and it eats up way more ammo with having more fire rate. So it will go to A tier for me. This doesn't mean the Viper is the weaker version of those two. It's actually does great with damage and still can be perked well, so even in A tier, it's still good. Now we can go for the expansion weapons. There's like 3 submachine guns in one weapon set, which is kind of weird, and the Bobcat is one of them. This SMG is absolutely amazing in terms of damage, good fire rate, but very slow reload time, even with a single reload speed perk. It still feels pretty slow. Shooting a lot does not mean it can have a consistent DPS. It's usually in between that needs a little optimization. So unless the other SMGs that have a sufficient reload time, I had to use a Chaos Agent loadout to make it perform better, but nevertheless, it stays on A tier. The other 2 of the same weapon set SMGs are 2 identical weapons, and it's the 2 specters. The difference between those 2 is the silenced one that has 2 rarities, epic and legendary, and the specter itself is only a rare rarity. I'll start with the silenced one and put it on A tier. It is a very accurate weapon. Recoil doesn't kick up too much while rapidly shooting, but the damage output isn't really that strong to take down a very higher power level single target, but it does well in crowd clearing, to be fair. Unless you have a Beetlejuice loadout for killing big smashers, then maybe it'll work out, but for now it is on A tier. The other Specter is the only expansion weapon that doesn't have its own epic or legendary rarity for some reason, so it's basically alright for players who are starting off, so it'll go on C tier. Next stop is the lightning pistol. It's actually under the weapon category of submachine guns. I don't know the reason behind the name of this weapon being called a pistol. It acts exactly like a submachine gun. Why not rename it to vacuum tube submachine gun? I know it sounds long, but we have tiny instrument of Death and Storm King's Onslaught, you name a couple. But in all seriousness, it is a phenomenal weapon. With a Chain Lightning 6 perk, it can be really strong against water enemies, especially in groups. The only thing that kept it behind S tier is because it is locked to nature and it is a little expensive, especially for a fast firing weapon. So kind of similar with the lightning pistol, the vindertech blazer is energy locked, also fires a little slow and uses energy cells. The damage is okay overall, but not great enough in higher power level zones. I haven't tried this weapon in the 160s, but in Ventures I do have it with good perks, but it didn't do really well even when I use the sledgehammer loadout. Since we are talking about expensive submachine guns having some sort of skill issue, we can talk about a good SMG at a cost. The Blastotron Mini, absolutely amazing. It has a few 6 perks that are really insane for crowd clearing, and it is the highest base damage SMG in the game to this day. If you get to see it in your sci-fi llamas, don't hesitate grabbing it and trying it out. It's an insane weapon for high power level missions. The one after is the Dirge Song. I've made a video about it being able to deal tons of damage with its explosive 6 perk at the cost of your health. It is a burst SMG that works with the same Flash AC and Chaos Agent loadout. I did explain a couple things in detail in that video, so feel free to check that one out. I will have to put this on B tier because by itself, without that loadout, it won't do as much damage and probably just becomes another regular burst SMG. Speaking about burst SMGs here, the Trinity is that as well. It has the second highest base damage in the game next to the Blastotron Mini, but it has some flaws. Therefore, I'm placing it on B tier. It's not always accurate, but if you hit all of your 4 burst shots, of course you will deal a lot of damage that way, but if barely any of them hit, it doesn't seem to do much. The recoil is a bit tricky too, but the damage is still kind of there if you use it with a build. Another high base damage SMG on this list is the newly released Primal SMG. I made a video about it upon its release, and I'm thinking about making a revisit video about it whenever there's a patch or two that fixes some bugs for some of its 6 perks. But yeah, definitely A tier because it hits really hard for some oblivious reasons. It is a mist monster killer weapon, although primal weapons are mainly focused on single target playstyle. It can still clear out a bunch of groups, but it's a little struggle in a situational way. But if it's against a mist monster, it's insanely strong. The only thing that backs down this primal SMG from S tier is that it's borderline inaccurate. Not all of your shots are gonna hit unless your target has a big hitbox or you're very close to your targets. So yeah, it nearly got a spot there. And as for the Shooting Star, that was released almost a year ago as of recording this tier list video, it is somewhat another expensive SMG, and I haven't tried it ever since I recorded a video for it. They've actually did a couple patches after, therefore I might revisit this one as well with the rest of the invasion weapons. For now, according to my experience back then, its reload speed and fire rate perks were so obsolete. It didn't change any stats of reload time and fire rate, but yeah, it was pretty buggy back then, but it's a fun weapon for low power level missions. The damage isn't so bad, so B tier for now. I'll surely visit this soon enough to see if this SMG changes my mind. The Hemlock is actually another amazing submachine gun. I supercharged it, and it does even better. Really decent against mist monsters because of its explosive 6 perks on a single target that I have on my Hemlock copy. Very good spray and pray SMG, and it's very consistent with its damage output. I may be biased for this, but you know, I love medieval styles and designs, and this Hemlock really caught my eye on it. That's why it deserves an S tier from me. There's another S tier submachine gun I really wanted to keep at the end here. It's the Ratatat, not Ratatat from the first generation of Pokemon. This is a powerful unit of a killing machine. I did try this with a totally rocking out loadout and a triple crit damage copy, and it did wonders. Even with a normal average crit build, it'll still do great. I even forgot to mention, the ratatat is not the only one that can be triple crit damage. The bobcat too have that perk option, but I still stand by my take on it. And the last of all SMGs is the pepper sprayer. I was thinking about putting it on S tier because of how accurate and how consistent the fire rate is. The reload time is pretty solid without the reload speed perk. You definitely will reload very fast with it and start shooting again, which makes the damage per second very, very consistent. The damage output, however, is not close to being enough. It has every aspect of a submachine gun to be very ideal at most, but the damage falls below. It's kind of like a counterbalance where if the utility of it is this good, something has to be not good so it doesn't become a part of a meta, and thus it goes to A tier. Still a good weapon for lower power level missions regardless. That should be all for the SMG tier list. It's cool that there's no bad SMG in the game. At least in my opinion, nothing is on D tier, meaning that this weapon category is amazing. It's not always the strongest suit for most player base, but they are really fun to try them out. There are a few submachine guns that I will surely try them out again later to see if they can change my mind, like the Shooting Star or the Dirge Song. Also, I consider the Founder's Quick Shot invalid, but if you're asking for it, B tier. Period. I'll link the template of this tier list in the description below. If you want to share different opinions on one of these weapons, feel free to do so in the comments, even if you disagree with some of my takes here and there. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next tier list video. Take it easy, take care of yourself, and love yourself.